Great morning, great afternoon, great evening, wherever this conversation finds you. I am Travis Gray. Today we are transforming with our guest, Krystal von Seyfried. Krystal is a multi-internationally published model, crowned Miss America Asia Grand Universe 2022. She is a researcher of Egyptology and so much more. Krystal, how are you?
Hey Travis, I'm really great. How are you?
I'm good. Just another day in paradise. I'm so excited for this conversation. Egypt, I wanted to have this conversation with you because I haven't ran into anybody that is, I've ran into people that are interested in Egypt but have never been. I've ran into people that are great scholars and many different traditions and spiritual traditions, but have never ran into enough conversation with real Egyptologists. And growing up, the very first job I ever wanted to do was to be an archaeologist. I was fascinated by Egypt and ancient civilizations from a long time ago. There's this right here. This is like a little medallion. It's the Aztec calendar. So I had at one time when I was a child, I had like books on mythology and stuff like this, and I had solved the sunstone. And I was like, one day I'm gonna go see that in person. I had the opportunity to do that. So whenever I go places, I'm like looking for the pyramids. I want to interact with that ancient civilization. But Egypt was always so close to my heart as a child. I would visit this nurse and I would test her on Egyptology things. I would ask her about like how they mummify people and take the brains out through the nose and just some weird young boy stuff that was really fascinating. So I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. How did you go from internationally published model, multi-time winning pageant winner, beauty pageant winner, and then you got into Egypt, you got into these other things. How did that happen for you?
Well, if we're gonna be completely honest, it's probably been like 1,000-year-long journey, but I'll just keep it to this incarnation. Just joking, but I'm not. But anyways, I through some really transformative private spiritual experiences, that are a little too private to talk about here, but they kind of involved, ancient Egyptian religion kind of calling out to me and bringing me home, and this happened kind of throughout the modeling thing. I'd say it has always kind of been there, my Egypt stuff, but like it got more intense obviously after I actually went to Egypt, because there is just something about that land, you know what I mean? Like if you haven't gone, a lot of people in the churches and stuff, they say go to Israel, go to the Holy Land, go to Palestine, right? But I would say Egypt is honestly so transformative, because this has been a holy land way before most of these other civilizations have even kind of come around, so ancient Egypt, the society is 3,000 years old. So just think about that and put that in perspective with we are Americans living in America, right? America is barely 300 years old, right?
Not even.
Not even. It's 247, I think, is how old we are. I think I just wrote in my notes something like that. But that, just thinking about it, and if you're somebody that does believe in reincarnation, and I know not everyone does, that's a certain belief. I personally believe in it, and actually a lot of people don't know this, but Judaism believes in reincarnation. They call it Gilgul, and it's a really interesting word. So it starts with Gimel, and it kind of looks like this. It looks like a foot kind of reaching down into the world, and then it comes with the Lamed, which is the tallest letter in the Hebrew alphabet. It's like a little, there's something that it goes above the top line, right? And that kind of they say that's the soul reaching up towards heaven with his foot on the earth, and that's what reincarnation is, right? They say we're supposed to go through these different lives, and anything that we haven't figured out in the last life, we're supposed to figure out in this one. That's our tikkun, that's our soul rectification. And I guess from the Buddhist view, it would be karma. Interesting that the word for Gilgul is it's technically rolling, And the wheel of samsara in Buddhism, it's represented as literally a wheel. So, but if you're just going to think about reincarnation, if like, if you're going to see a society that's 3,000 years old, most people have probably had a life in ancient Egypt. You know what I mean? And I actually, like, I was telling this one time to my old boss, and we were doing a thing on lapis lazuli, and I was like, I really want to play up the Egypt thing, because of course I'm always going to want to, I'll bring Egypt into any conversation. You know what I mean? Like, my friends all know it. And I was like, we should really play up the Egypt thing. And I was just telling him that fact that I told you, like, think about it, 3,000 years old. How many people are going to have like at least one life cycle in Egypt? I think that's why people love Egypt nowadays, even if they're not from Egypt. People just have this random calling to it, And he was like, I don't know, like, I don't really want to do that. And I literally look up, and there's an ad, and it's for our company, and somebody has the Eye of Horus tattooed on their back, and that was the center point of the ad with the thing. And I was just like, the Eye of Horus is right there. And we're like, how many miles away are we from Egypt? We're in downtown LA. How many years like after? We're like thousands of years after. So it's like Egypt is just something that is omnipresent, I feel, in the human psyche, Yeah,
it's just like still alive. You're making a good point. We've likely had lives in our DNA is encoded with these lives that are from Egypt, from these ancient cultures all over the world, and that is a part of we are survivors. Like the fact that our ancestors have lived many lives, have been able to raise children over many generations, for us to be here is a miracle in itself, and a miracle that many people should be praying every day, thanking God that they exist, that they much gratitude for that. That's really amazing. I like this conversation about past lives. Have you experienced things like intergenerational trauma? And have you heard of holotropic breath work?
All right, intergenerational trauma, definitely have like a decent chunk of that in my life. Like, look, like my father experienced World War II as a child. My father was born in 1939. My grandfather, not my great-grandfather or my great-great-grandfather, my grandfather died marching back to Germany from the Battle of the Bulge. Wow. So it's like, that's my grandfather. I never got to meet him. He died when my dad was 7. You know what I mean? And so it's like that trauma in my DNA, as a German, that like, that is so close to World War II. I'm like for my age, I'm actually quite closer in a way to like, the events of World War II than like other Germans I know that are my age, because they're like, yeah, like that's like my great grandpa that was like part of that. And I'm like, nope, my dad was starving. My grandpa like fought, you know what I mean? So it's like, it's right there for me. And I actually think that that's part of why I'm so interested in like the Middle East now, because like, of course, with World War II, there's a discussion of the Holocaust, the establishment of the state of Israel and things like that. And I just feel so connected to these issues, even though, look, I'm not Arab, I'm not Jewish. You know what I mean? Like I am a half Filipino, half German woman from Los Angeles. Like I didn't even grow up with Arabs. So why am I interested in this part of the world? I think it's that generational trauma. Like there's something for me to heal there. I'm part of the conversation as a German, because the things that happened in my father's country are a huge part of what's going on there now. So I think intergenerational trauma is a huge thing. My other half is Filipino. We got colonized. That's a whole other conversation,
Right.
But yeah, so that's my thoughts on intergenerational trauma. But also, I've never heard of holotropic breath work.
So holotropic breathwork was created by Stanislav Grof, and he's one of the founders of transpersonal psychology. Him and his wife, belated wife, Christina Grof, they developed holotropic breathwork because he was involved in early LSD studies, like in the 50s, early 60s, involved in LSD studies. And then him and his wife wanted to develop a method for tapping into that psychedelic consciousness, but without the use of substances. And so he developed holotropic breathwork. It happens over like a 3-hour period, like you and a partner, it'll be dyads. So like you and I are partners, and I will hold space for you to breathe very intentionally for 3 hours to this evocative music that is sort of pulling on your emotional experience. And the research around holotropic breath work, kind of a thematic research, the experiential research on this experience, this practice, has brought up a lot of connections to people's past generations or past lives. A lot of people have described these past life experiences. I've done holotropic breathwork a few times, and one of the times that I did that, I did have a past life experience of being in Scotland, but like fighting for freedom in Scotland, and I was beheaded during this experience. So it was really interesting, really intriguing. But you know, the dream work, the deep unconscious work, subconscious work, and practices like holotropic breathwork can really invite you to tap into those past lives, connect with that Egyptian lineage that is sure to be there.
Yeah, it's really funny that you say that to me because you know, one of my colleagues, he found something. Okay, so I have a bit of a past life story, you know, proud of it. There's this woman in Egypt that I have this great connection to. Her name was Nefertjabet, and she was the daughter of Khufu. She was a scribe. There's a whole story behind that. But anyways, like basically I dressed up as her for Halloween, knowing that I've had these experiences seeing this. And my colleague was in Egypt, didn't even know he was in Egypt. 24 hours, like within 24 hours of dressing up as her, he FaceTimes me and he's like, hey, like you wanted me to go to Nefertjabet's tomb, like here it is. And he was showing me the tomb straight up on FaceTime. So I'm like, how is it that I dress up as her kind of on a whim, you know what I mean? And I'm getting FaceTimed with this tomb. You know what I mean? Like within 24 hours, and he sent me like a rock from near the tomb, and right there, if you see, it says Krystal Nefertjabet. Like he addressed it to me as that. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's, you know, going into past lives is really hard because you do see so much trauma, and it's like, you know, I've been told many times, like before I started going into it, they're like, okay, like that portal, are you ready? Because, you know, one of my friends, she was like a highly psychic, kind of spiritual intuitive. She was like viewing my past lives, and she was like, Krystal, this is really weird, I've literally never seen this before. I just see like a gigantic, like cylindrical kind of hallway, like up like this. And she's like, there's just like countless doors. I don't think I've ever seen somebody with this many past lives. This is insane. You know what I mean? And I'm just like, I don't know. That's just the construct that my soul came up with, I guess. You know, I guess it made sense for my brain overall. But you know,
and is past lives kind of deeply rooted into Egyptology as well? Like in the history culture of Egypt, past lives is a thing for them as well. Is that correct?
honestly, I would say that like more the mobility of the soul is a big thing. So like, you know, the soul, there are 9 parts of the soul. I can go into it. It's a really long thing. I would actually just have to like double check my list because there's so many, but like the main parts I'd say are the Ka and the Ba. So the Ka is represented with hieroglyphs, and they're like hands. They're like this. So I could draw them and show them, but basically I can be a physical Ka hieroglyph. Right now it's literally pretty accurate, but like right here, it's just like, it's literally just like that with the hands, obviously no head, you know, but just like that. And this is like your vital force. This is the part of you that dies when you die, you know? So this is like kind of that force of motion, this thing, you know. And then the Ba is the personality soul. You know, the Ba is the personality soul, and it's represented by a bird with a human head hieroglyph. So the Ba is this part of you that kind of stays the same throughout incarnations, and this is the part that I think kind of stays the same, you know. And I found like past lives, and I found, you know, like people that kind of still look like me today. You know, I think that people with a certain level of like spiritual awareness can like kind of go into these other lives with the same sort of look. You know, maybe it's like, okay, like I kind of I like these features now, like I'm gonna like them the next time. You know, some of these people might want to like change it up. It really depends, you know, at the levels of, you know, spiritual awareness and levels, because like unfortunately, like people like to be all kumbaya and like no levels with this, but it's like, no, like there kind of is a bit of a spiritual hierarchy. There are people that are a little more advanced and people that are not advanced, and that's not a bad thing, because it's like, hey, like I'm not really advanced in physical activity and working out. That's why I go to my personal trainer. You know, they help me with that. It's just, it doesn't mean anything lower about you. It just says that, hey, if there's a skill that you haven't worked on as much yet, and you know, you have more time to work on it, so that's fine. But anyways, the Ba is kind of what stays the same throughout incarnations. And like you know, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Book of the coming forth by day, and I think that's a cooler translation than Book of the Dead, because Book of the Dead just sounds like creepy, you know, to the human, like to the modern human mind, right? This Book of the Dead, it literally just has like all these spells that are going to help you get through the afterlife, because you know, they basically say like it's kind of the wild wild west when you die, you know. There's just so many things out in the astral. It's kind of like yeah, like it's the wild wild west. So it's like the Book of the Dead is literally just a list of spells that are going to help people get through. And it's like it's really interesting in ancient Egypt. It's like if you say a certain demon's name correctly, they come to your side, you know, they can't harm you anymore. And that's like that whole, a part of the 9 parts of the Egyptian soul. So there's the Ren, you know, and it's represented like this. It's the R, and that's the N, and that's your name, and that's a vital part of your soul in ancient Egypt. So your name really matters. That's why we have pharaohs that are named like Amenhotep. Amen is at peace, Amen is please. So it's like all of the names mean something. Like we're not just going to name somebody Tom and not know what the heck Tom means, you know what I mean? Like Tom does have a meaning. Speaking of names, actually, would you like to see your names in hieroglyphs?
Yes, please. Please. This was an awesome offering that it was so unexpected. So can you tell the audience what you did here?
Oh yeah, so you know, just because I study ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs, you know, I can really easily transliterate names into hieroglyphs. That takes like zero brain knowledge. But I also like to do translations where it's like I look up the etymology of somebody's name and then look up the meaning of that in ancient Egyptian. So I did it for
I love the etymology of words, and I think that's so important in Egyptology. To you had mentioned prior to our conversation beginning, you had mentioned like the Greek roots and the Greek influence into Egypt, and knowing where the etymology, the roots of those words, is so important. And a lot of times with clients, we'll take a look at their name and their namesake and their meaning of their names and things like this. And so really fascinating, and to get that from an Egypt perspective is super cool.
It's so important because it's literally a part of your soul, you know.
Yeah.
Like I believe that we choose our names. Like I love my name, Krystal von Seyfried. It literally means Crystal, the lion-hearted of the free victory, or the peaceful victory. So it's like I personally love that. But hey, so I can show you, let's do the translation first, because I think that's cool. So your name, Travis, I looked it up. It means essentially to cross over. I'm sure you know that. So the word for crossover in ancient Egyptian, it is ha'i. So this is ha'i. This is a transliteral. I mean, this is a biliteral for hat. This is the E, and this is the sail, which means like to cross over, because obviously crossing over is associated with a boat in ancient Egypt. And then this word is hetch, and this means silver. So gray, there wasn't really a term for gray in ancient Egypt. We didn't have that many colors, you know, but there was a word for silver. And I'd say silver is pretty darn close to gray. 100%. So the word was hetch. So your name would be Hai Hetch.
Hai Hetch.
So yeah, so that's your name translated into ancient Egyptian. This is your name transliterated into ancient Egyptian. So this is like, so if you send this back to ancient Egypt, they'd be like Travis Gray, but they wouldn't know what in the world that means. But they'd be able to say your name, you know? Yeah. So that means something. So this is Travis Gray. Cool. You know, so that's what that means. And then your podcast, Gray Transforms. So the verb comes first in ancient Egyptian. So this is the word khaperu, and there's a bunch of different ways to write it, but I wanted to choose it with the beetle, because I think that the beetle is obviously very emblematic of ancient Egypt. And you know, seeing the dung beetle like give off children was kind of a miracle, you know, because they would just see this beetle and there'd just be all these kids. So it's like a very huge symbol for transformation and like revival and things like that. So And I like this swirl here too, because the swirl, it's kind of associated with the Sahu, the astral body. So, and the swirl always kind of makes me think of transformation. So this is Kaperu, and we have, I'm pretty sure this is like kind of like an Osiris right here, and then just another deity. So this like transforms, and this is the same. This is the Gray, the Hetch. So Kaperu Hetch would be Gray Transforms podcast in ancient.
That is so cool, and what a just like a beautiful offering. Thank you so much for doing that. It's so amazing, so not expected, not planned at all. That's really incredible. I know that recently you've been studying the Quran as well, the Quran, and I had the opportunity to be in a sort of a workshop with a Sufi master, and he worked on teaching us a little bit about how to write in Arabic. And so I've written my name in Arabic before and stuff like this. I have a picture somewhere around here of my name in Arabic, and so it's really cool to see that translated in other ways. Thank you so much for doing that. I really appreciate that, Krystal.
That's my name in Arabic right there. My friend made that. He's Mexican. But he learned it.
Cool.
I'm pointing right there. It's kind of like crumbled and everything. I want to like frame it and everything, but for now it's just taped on my wall, because I like it there. Yeah, Arabic is an absolutely beautiful language, and I love that you mentioned the Quran, because I can't remember the exact verse. But they talk about Jannah, right? The Arabic, the Islamic idea of heaven. And I was just reading again about the field of reeds in ancient Egypt, and the field of reeds was essentially like ancient Egyptian heaven. And they were saying that like the people are taller in Jannah. So so the people in Jannah are like, I think 30 feet tall. Please forgive me if I'm wrong, but I know that they're taller. They're not as tall as we are here. And in the field of reeds, the ancient Egyptians, in their idea of heaven, they saw themselves as taller as well. And this is why like one of the big parts of my research is like seeing the intersections between ancient Egypt and modern Egypt, because so many people treat them like they're completely different entities. And it's like they're really not. They're the same people. You look at an Egyptian on the street, they look a lot like these statues and everything. And it's quite disrespectful that Westerners will go to this country, and some of them will even say like, oh, the ancient Egyptians were white. I'm like, no, I'd say it was a pretty mixed society, but for the most part, the genetics are kind of the same. The language has changed, but so when Egyptians speak Arabic, I think it's kind of a bit of a joke in the Arab world, but Egyptians, they speak with a lot of Z's in their Egyptian accent. You know what I mean? Like when they speak in Arabic and also when they speak in English. Well, the word for man in ancient Egyptian is Z. The word for woman in ancient Egyptian is Zet. And a lot of the pharaohs there's like these SZ kind of names, and I'm like, I think that particular Egyptian Arabic accent, that has to come from our ancient language, because the rest of the Middle East doesn't do that. Like the barking, you know what I mean? Like the P's and the B's in Arabic. The other Arab speakers, they do that, and that is just like a kind of like quip in the Arabic language. It's kind of like this thing. But then one thing that is unique to the Egyptians is this Z accent. And when I was studying ancient Egyptian, I was like making certain sentences, and it was just like zzz, and I'm just like, wow, like there's a lot of Z's in this language. And I made that connection because, like I was saying before, these Egyptologists that go to Egypt and they're not concerned with how this affects modern Egyptian society. I'm like, you're not a true Egyptologist. You don't really have love for Egypt, because if you don't care about what's going on with Egypt now, what's the point of studying fucking dead people? You know what I mean? Like, you're an escapist if all you want to do is study dead people. So it's like, yes, okay, I do study ancient Mesopotamia. I was just going in on like King Gudea and all this stuff, and like it's like that seems like it doesn't matter, but it's like, no, with everything that I study, I try my best to relate it to something that will be relevant for the modern day, because what I'm here for, my mission, is because I want to make this world a better place than the one that I was born into. And that's kind of a hard mission, but it's like, look, like I don't choose the easy way when I do things. You know what I mean? Like I could have just gone full in on the modeling, full in on the pageants, and let that be my career. But it's like, no, I feel like there's something more important that I could be doing for this world. So that's why I've kind of sort of hopefully gracefully transitioned, my life into that. That makes sense.
Yeah, you're carving your path, and I think that that's a beautiful thing. I do recognize the 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 truth that some people are going into certain things in their lives as a form of escapism, and it's unfortunate to see how that can have negative ramifications of the culture in Egypt and the culture in the area. Just to it's abusive in some way when you're just running away from something else to in culture, then it becomes like, it becomes westernized instead of holding on to the values of the original culture. It's hard to say, like, some of that is naturally a process of just human nature, human development, human nature. And then other aspects of that is like, how do we hold both? How can we really hold both in safe, protected ways, supportive ways? But I do see, like, just as human beings, a lot of the things that we can get into can be a form of escapism.
Right, no, exactly. And it's really interesting that Libras are the scales, but it's quite hard for us to get balance. But once we do get balance, like, my God, like we're a force to be reckoned with. And that's kind of what I've been working on, like I'm trying to balance out the workload. And I think that I might start a new system where it's like, I like to give myself a little bit of like variety. So it's like, am I in the mood for Mesopotamia today? Am I in an Egypt mood today? Do I want some Jewish stuff today? You know what I mean? But it's like, I wonder, it's like, maybe it's like, I should do like for a week, I should just be like, all right, this week is hieroglyphs week. This week is this week, so it's like, I'm still trying to figure out how to best balance out my daily routine. And your daily routine does reflect, I think, your psyche, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Having that organized. And my daily routine is essentially like hours of prayer, hours of studying,
Yeah.
working
The
out.
reason people go to school is because it provides them a curriculum. It provides them a certain path. For certain people, it will make sense to go to school. For me, it made sense to be on the trajectory, the path, the way that I am carving it. It made sense for me. But I would say that most people, most of the people that I work with, for many other people, I would say that if they are not, specific into this certain niche, it's probably not necessary for them to pay all of this money towards their education, but rather learning is always a part of your human life. It's always an important part of your human life. And so you have to build the curriculum yourself. And that's
Oh,
tough. It's like if you go to the gym and you don't have that personal trainer, it's easy to slack. It's easy to not get all of the work done that you should be getting done in those muscle groups, or for the body in the way that you want that body to be shaped. But just like that, you want your mind to be shaped in a certain way. Developing, I like where your head's at, the systems, the developing the curriculum, building the curriculum of what you want to know. But what is it that you want to inquire into? That's sort of like the next iteration of your path, is like, what am I asking? That's really important. What questions are you asking? We can get lost, even like drowning in all of the knowledge. Like I could every time I see books, I want to know the name of it. I want to know the author. I want to collect it. I want to keep it. And that's great. But that's tough to move. Like you don't need all of the knowledge. This is a great time to let the tribe know about the Gray Transforms website, graytransforms.com. This is a great place to go to check out all the links to the podcast. It's a great place to support the podcast, to support the channel. You can get a Gray Transforms t-shirt with a transegoic gnosis symbol for transformation on the back. You can get a Gray Transforms bullet journal. This is a simple tool, but this is a tool for mastery. You can get stickers. You can get a Gray Transforms mug, so you can drink great tea in your Gray Transforms mug, while you are taking notes in your Gray Transforms bullet journal, while you are listening to high-level transformative conversations on the Gray Transforms podcast. So comment, like, share, subscribe, follow, and together this tribe is moving humanity forward. Let's get back to this conversation.
It happens, but hey, at least we're back.
The last thing that I was saying, just like this is now just kind of person to person, is like or researcher to researcher. Really, it's you at your path is like it's great to like collect all of this knowledge, and we can do that all day. I love collecting books, collecting knowledge, collecting information. But what's most important is what your inquiry is. What are you inquiring into? What is your deep embodied inquiry? What are the questions that you are asking? And then developing your curriculum to give you the information that you need to answer those questions. Maybe if you wanted to write a book then about Egyptology, then you would be collecting the information that would help you answer the questions that would be in the book that you would write. And that book is probably the process of creating that would be answering your own inquiry.
Right. I guess my general inquiry is that I'm in love with creation. I'm in love with this universe. I'm in love with the one, the absolute God kind of above us. My idea of God is overreaching. It's not really like a subject-object relationship. You know what I mean? Like I kind of see it as something like completely beyond us, unintelligible, a little bit like Neoplatonist in that way, I guess. But God presents itself through things that we can comprehend. So I believe that God is present in cultures, God is present in everything. And this is why I study religion so much, because I love to see how God is interpreted by different types of human beings. It's interesting to see how the Sumerians interpret God, how the ancient Egyptians do, how the Abrahamic faiths do. And like, I'm actually part of this project right now. I just had to close off like a window of it. It's called 108 Churches, or the 108 Churches Project, because 108 is my favorite number. I mean, I think we know because we got the mullahs on. Yeah, like we know where that is. But I'm making a project to go to 108 different churches just because I want to see how different groups of people relate to God. And this kind of relates back to my Egyptology thing, right? Where I was saying, look, these Egyptologists that only care about ancient Egypt, I'm like, you're an escapist. You don't truly love Egypt, because if you truly loved Egypt, you would be hanging out with Egyptians. You'd be learning Arabic. You'd be learning about Islam. Not like you even have to convert, you know what I mean? But it's like you should be knowledgeable about it, And it's like, for me, being like kind of a biblical scholar as well, like knowing my way around the Tanakh, knowing my way about the Gospels, decently. You can read about that all day and read about all the different scribes and everything. But at the end of the day, those are dead people, again. So I go into these churches because I want to see how these things that I'm studying are being used and related to in the modern world. So it's kind of like, it's really cool for me to go out and see like, all right, like I'm doing this alone. I'm learning this myself. You know what I mean? Like watching these lectures. And then it's like, I get to go out on a field trip and I get to see how this is being talked about in the modern day and with a faith standpoint, and I think that's just super, super cool. And that's kind of my overall view on life is like, I'm learning all these things because I want to relate this back to our modern day society. And kind of my goal, like we have all of us in our hands, we have the Library of Alexandria. You know what I mean? We have access to freaking everything, but like how many people use this for that informational knowledge? I know you do, and I know I do. Mm-hmm. But most people are scrolling on TikTok all day, watching people make like jokes that aren't even funny. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like it's like a lot of them aren't, like this guy was like twerking as a joke. I'm like, no, like put that on another website. You know what I mean? But like, it's like we don't use this vast, damn near limitless, stream of information. And it's like if all of us chose a subject that we like and started to research it, like, my God, where would the world be? And I see these Nepo babies and stuff, right? That all this jokes about them, like these celebrities that have everything handed to them, like they should be scholarly people. They shouldn't want, like, because they have the money to be scholars. You know what I mean? Like being a scholar is not a cheap thing. You have to have this, you kind of have to have a gift to do it. And the fact that I'm able to kind of be an independent full-time student now is because I have a like kind of a passive income that I'm very lucky to have,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's one, if I ever feel like I'm on the wrong path, that's like God just showing me like, nope, like I gave you this so you could spend your day studying and not working to stay alive. You know what I mean? But generally, I guess I'm just studying all this stuff because I love God, I love knowledge, and I want to relate all this ancient knowledge and help make our modern day a better place. And I know that's like it's a bit of a winded answer, but it's like I can't, it's hard to like condense my love for creation into like a couple sentences. It's impossible.
Yeah, I mean that's what makes this such an awesome conversation. That's what makes this the right conversation. This is fundamentally transpersonal psychology is very cross-religious, very cross-spiritual, very multi-dimensional in a scientific, academic, rigorous way. Like to be serious about the study, and not to not have a good time. Like you want to enjoy it, but not to take it for granted, not to get the value out of it. I love what you were saying about celebrities that are gathering all of this wealth. Those, I mean, they have the money to be scholars. They have the money to take deep dives into certain areas of information or certain areas of their curiosities. That is most aligned to them in ways that other people just do not. And there are beautiful things that have the potential to prosper or to be to emerge from that deep dive into their resources would allow them that opportunity. So it's really great that you have such a heart and an interest in all of these different spiritualities, and then have found your way to Egyptology. So that's really great. So what about Egypt? How has Egypt informed the way that you live your life?
Well, honestly, I would say that Egypt has informed my life in kind of just like a general way of moving through the world, seeing this kind of interconnectedness. And there's this phrase in the ancient Egyptian. I know that the main words of it would be like Ren and Jet, which is like Ren is name, Jet is eternity. It's with the snake and like that. But anyways, like there's this phrase in ancient Egyptian where it's like to say the name of the dead is to make them live again. The light on my screen just went like, I don't know if you noticed that was really interesting. But yeah, okay, like I keep saying about these dead people, but it's like, I think that they're still here, and I think that they have things that, we can interpret, and it doesn't mean you have to sit there in a seance, and like try to channel some kind of spirit, but it's like, just reading somebody's name, you're connecting to this certain kind of energy conduit. You know what I mean? Like if 50 years from now, like what do you want people to think of, or what do you want people to feel when they read your name, Travis Gray? You know what I mean? Like I think with all the things you've put forth into the world, they're gonna feel something. You know what I mean? Like maybe that day they'll come upon like something that you were into. Like I think that energy is never like destroyed. It just kind of moves through and like through the universe in a different way. But I guess like another way is definitely through the hieroglyphs. You know what I mean? The hieroglyphs as a language, it's literally a holy language. And it's like, seeing like, okay, so this is your name in hieroglyphs, right? Now the resonance of your name translated is now connected to the resonance of every single other thing in ancient Egyptian that was written with these letters. Now you're connected to this. You know what I mean? Now you're connected to this in a personal way. I put that into being by writing that. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of this, it's really, really, really hard to explain, because I know another woman who does ancient Egyptian kind of like spirituality in a similar way that I do with candles. And she was explaining things that she was doing with the candles. And I was like, this is something that's very common to Egyptian souls. Little things like, making sure your intentions are like completely accurate, like compounding things, like, I guess something that feels very Egyptian for something that feels very ancient Egyptian that I do is, I make incense with like the fallen flowers. on my block, instead of letting them be thrown away. They're very powerful flowers. They're called Brugmansias, and they're kind of like little portal openers. You know what I mean? Like it's called Madre Toe in South America. And basically, like, there are these amazing stories where these people would drink this tea, they would pass out, they were like really sick, and they would have visions of this like beautiful woman coming to them with like all these little elves, and they would basically do surgery on them in the dream state, and they would wake up and they would be basically healed. So I process that and I make it into incense, which I use to, like, for my own spiritual practice. And I feel like in ancient Egypt, like, nothing was really like wasted. Everything was kind of reused. Like there's a certain creativity to ancient Egypt, even though a lot of Egyptologists will say like Egypt was not really creative, because you look at ancient Egypt, you see art from the old kingdom and you see art from the new kingdom. It is essentially the same. So think about like 3,000 years of culture that does not change in art. That's insane. Like, think about, like, look at like those TikToks of like anime, showing anime from like the 80s to now. It looks completely different, so it's this, like, I'd say the Egyptian energy is this like deep reverence for the divine that kind of goes above and beyond like other religions, and this kind of like a bit of a conservatism, like if it isn't broke, don't fix it. And I'm a little bit stubborn in that way with how I do things. You know what I mean? Like, when I find a system that I like, I really just stick to it. You know what I mean? So I guess those are some small ways in which it kind of affects my life. But again, it's something that is honestly very hard to put into words. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. It's difficult to put anything that is spiritual or about God. It is difficult to put into words. And I think that serves a purpose. There's a purpose served by it being so difficult to put God into words. Something that I came across at some point was that ancient Hebrews had believed that, like, Elohim was almost like it's like bad luck to say the name. It was bad luck to write this name of God. Sorry?
Yod He Vav He, those letters.
Oh,
Yod He, they don't say that. They call their God like Adonai and stuff.
okay, yeah. So I just had come across something that was like it was like bad luck to like say the name, and that was due to, like, it was kind of this idea of, like, how dare you, a limited human being, you have such a short period of time on this earth, how dare you try to speak about the incomprehensible, the bigger than anything could be in size, the infinitely without dimension. How dare you try to stick that into this short, small little box, this one little word? And I find that a really fascinating idea. I think I do understand, though, that your interest in Egyptology, what you've been informed by, is the experience of the energy being passed down under many generations, and maybe over that 3,000 years, while the art did not evolve, it just sort of continued to maintain a tradition, a culture that was able to maintain its art in the same way over 3,000 years. That's a different sort of practice. That's a different sort of that's a different sort of level of thing. It might not seem like innovatively creative, but it is to have that have been so honest, so consistent, so just to stay with like the truth of that, capital T, is really fascinating, really amazing. So I like hearing that what you've been informed by is without words, but it's like a deep energetic resonance that has informed many ways that you look at maybe your life and other things. It's really cool. What myths, what stories of ancient Egypt do you gravitate to most? Do you have one or maybe a couple that you resonate with most?
Honestly, I love all of them, but one that I was actually just telling my friends the other day, was, like, as an Egyptologist, my kind of favorite thing is actually less about the myths, but more about the Egyptian people and how it affects them. You know what
Sure.
I mean? And like, we know like Egypt is a Muslim country, and for the most part, they don't eat pork, they don't even sell it. You know what I mean? It's not really a thing. I think in some expat communities you can buy it, but for the most part, not really a thing in the Arab world, pork, you know. And this probably does link back to how back in the days, like you would need a lot more water to like kind of keep pigs alive in the desert, like they also like kind of eat their own shit, you know what I mean? Like there's just a lot of things that would go against raising pigs in this kind of climate versus like let's say a tropical climate like the Philippines. Very easy to raise pigs there. That's why like Filipinos eat a lot of pork. It's a pretty main source of protein in our culture. Germans as well. It's like easy to do it out there, but in the desert, if people got a taste for pork out there, then like the resources would not have been spread out as evenly. Like maybe there would be like less people even able to live, because it's like, what if some rich guy really likes pork? He would have a big pig farm type thing, you know what I mean? And the other people wouldn't be able to eat. But anyways, in ancient Egypt, they didn't eat pork either, really. And porks were kind of seen as bad because there is this one myth where obviously, like, Seth and Horus are fighting, and Seth is the Neter, and that's the ancient Egyptian word for God. And I think it's really interesting that it sounds like nature, right? But Seth is the Neter of like, storms, the desert, foreigners, things like that. And people have connected Set with Satan, because it's like a bit of a cognate with like an added N. But Egypt did not like the desert. That's something that people kind of get wrong nowadays. And it's like, look, I say that and people look at me like I'm crazy. You know what I mean? And it's like, well, look, like Egyptian society is literally, even today, it is all centered around the Nile. They didn't like to go far away from the Nile. The Nile was the lifeblood of Egypt, So they didn't like the desert. So much so that they named their kind of adversary god Set and said that he came from the desert. So it's like, yeah, you guys must really not like the desert then. But anyway, so Set, that's what Set is. And then there's Horus, who's a child of Isis and Osiris. And Horus in ancient Egyptian was actually called Heru. And that actually sounds so much like hero nowadays, right? And, he is kind of the quintessential Egyptian hero. His father gets slain and he avenges his father and eventually does bring Set to this kind of, not retribution, this reconciliation. You know what I mean? Like at many of the myths, Seth is not evil anymore. You know what I mean? But anyways, they're going at it because they're always going at it, right? And at one point, Seth blinds Horus, damages his eyes, and Horus in return castrates Seth. And later on in the myth, Horus is walking around, he sees a black pig, and he's like, oh my god, I'm in so much pain. He like faints because he's in so much pain. He's like, it feels as if like I just got my eye, jacked up again, essentially, and all the other Neters, they're like, oh, if we know Set did that black pig has got to be Set, so then after that myth, or like after that myth was kind of told, that's one of the reasons why ancient Egyptians, they kind of saw pigs as this evil thing, because Set was a pig. And I read that story and I was like, wow, like this is not a story that I've heard before. And it shows this cultural continuity. And that's very important to me because like there shouldn't be seen a huge separation between the ancient and the modern Egyptians, because it's kind of insulting to this like great, lovely people. Like with my love for Egyptology, I like to say that I want to consider myself basically like a slave for the great people of Egypt, both the living and the dead. And I put the living first because those are there and they're what matter. But there has to be more of a connection, and there's so many, like so many, like ancient Egypt, cats are obviously huge. There is an Neter bust, on cats, right? I literally have an Egyptian cat like right there, huge thing over there. And in Islam, cats are considered clean more than dogs. So it's like you can like pet a cat and I think you can go in and pray. I don't think you have to wash yourself type thing. You know what I mean? Because cats are considered clean. So there's another thing where it's like cats are kind of seen as this holy, pure sort of thing. You know what I mean? So there's another cultural continuity right there. But that myth I thought was really kind of interesting with the pig. But another thing that I think is interesting in ancient Egyptian myth, like we were talking about Newt, and I think it's really interesting how Newt is considered the sky, right? and Geb is considered like the earth.
So, before you go into that myth sounds all that is really interesting. That cultural continuity that you're finding in the myth and how the culture is lived right now, lived today. That's really beautiful. The myth now that you're going into is I had spoken to Krystal prior to this, and I had shown her a piece of art, and I think maybe right now I will put in this picture of this piece of art. So it's something that I have in my room. It's a big. It's fairly big. Maybe I'll get some size dimensions. I'll think about that. But it is a myth, a story of Newt on papyrus. So the paper that is used in Egypt and in ancient Egypt. And it's just this beautiful thing. It's in a really great frame, and so it is. The picture will be here right now. So tell us about this myth, this story of Nut.
All right. Well, she's a child of Shu and Tefnut, and Shu is this. He's kind of like this breath. That's what he's kind of personified as. And Tefnut, some people say like she's a water goddess, but not exactly. She's more like the dew, like sweat, you know what I mean? Like, so it's like water that kind of comes out of a human being rather than like water that's inherently separate from a human being, versus like a body of like, our sweat versus an ocean, right? And that's actually one of the very unique Egyptian entities that I have not really found a Greek like counterpart to, like to have like a goddess of like the sweat, like the dew, you know what I mean, like this water. But Newt is essentially like the sky, and she's a daughter of that, and she's with Jeb, who is the earth, and what's really crazy interesting, and that shows like a fundamental difference between the view of women in Egypt and in other cultures, is that the Greek counterpart of Newt is Uranos. That's the sky, and that's a man, and Jeb is a man in the Egyptian myth, right? But his counterpart in Greek myth is the woman. So the earth and the sky are kind of flipped, you know what I mean, in terms of like that gender relation. And it kind of reminds me of this Amar Diab song. It's called like Nur Alain, which means like the light of my eyes. And like when you listen to modern Egyptian songs about women, my God, man, like nobody sings about how much they love women like the Egyptian man can. Like this one song, Tamali Mak, it's by the same guy from Port Said, Amar Diab, and he's basically going on about, he's like, I miss you so much. I miss you even when I'm right next to you. Like, and I'm just like, that's crazy. That's beautiful. You know what I mean? And it's like, I feel like it shows this view of women that it's like, instead of viewing women, the female thing, as this earth that's kind of inherently, I don't think the earth is like beneath us, but it's like technically speaking, I guess, what do we know more, the earth or the sky? We're more familiar with the earth. The sky is just this far-reaching thing that we can't, like, we don't know how far it goes up, do we? You know what I mean? Like it's something that's so much more unintelligible, seemingly more important, that drapes over us. And I think it's really interesting that the Egyptians saw, the sky as feminine. And another thing that is beautiful about how the ancient Egyptians viewed, women is, Ma'at, Mother Ma'at, the goddess of truth, right, or the Netert of truth. And they saw the idea of cosmic justice as a beautiful woman, and I think that that's so significant, because like, think about it. Can you name like any ancient Greek queen?
Aphrodite, I guess.
That she's a goddess, but it's like, I mean, like a human being that was
a human being that was a queen. No.
Yeah, no, you can't. And like, there actually was one very famous Greek queen, and her name was Cleopatra, though, and she was one of the Ptolemies in Egypt. So Cleopatra is actually Greek, but I think that she was Egyptian in her soul. But it's just like this view of women in Egypt, you know what I mean? It's so respectful, and it's so different. Egyptian women have the most rights, like, and then obviously we have the Egyptian queens, Hatshepsut, we have Cleopatra, Sobek Neferu is another one, Arsinoe, there's a bunch that are aside from Cleopatra and Hatshepsut, but those are Hatshepsut and Cleopatra are like the main ones that are known. And what's crazy though is that despite having this high view of women, Hatshepsut was essentially erased. Like, so Cleopatra, so Bob Breer was just talking about this in the lecture that I was listening to as I was doing my makeup, just because I like listening to Egyptian lectures when I love listening to lectures when I do my makeup. Favorite thing. He was saying that Cleopatra actually did not know that Hatshepsut existed because she was erased from the records, which is, so even though a culture can have this like high, lofty view of women, there is still kind of this like, there's just still seemingly always this push. And that's why like as a woman in this kind of like research field, I have to be aware of that kind of dynamic at play with humanity, in this kind of post-patriarchal kind of society, I'm Filipino and Filipinos are pretty matriarchal, but
Yeah, as a woman, as a researcher, as a beautiful woman, a researcher, a model, a pageant winner, all of those things, there are aspects of that have been they get kind of like crossed and confused, and kind of in a very cool and similar way that you just described, the Greeks having a counterpart god of the sky as male, where Egyptians saw the sky as female, and back and forth. I think I would resonate a little bit more with the Egyptian way that the sky is a female, and earth, the substances that are material, these things, being more masculine in nature, more masculine in the sort of principle, masculine in principle of a thing, but the feminine is something more mysterious and more intangible, and because of its intangibility, there's a reaching out for it. There's a constant and consistent reaching out for the feminine in the world, and that's creation, that's creativity, that's art, that's the arts become a feminine thing because of all of that like principle dynamic of masculine, feminine. It's really fascinating how all these different cultures see it differently. And I do love this painting. It's the goddess Nut over like in the starry sky, sort of like the goddess of the sky, the goddess of space, humped over, or like reaching over a story of creation. And I think that's just like what a beautiful rendition of that same principle of feminine and the relationship to creativity, to creation, coming from the sky, coming from the feminine body, like that the world was birthed, the cosmos was birthed from this divine entity of femininity.
Completely. And it does, what you were saying just reminded me too of like, Shiva and Shakti in, Hindu kind of, schools of thought. This is frankincense and myrrh, by the way. This was the kind of like the favorite incense in ancient Egypt. I usually make it. I like to use Sudanese frankincense and Ethiopian myrrh because that's what they would use in ancient Egypt, and I make it with Nile water and everything. But I haven't made incense in a minute, so. But This is just store. See, like
I love the smell of frankincense. Frankincense is culturally used often in kind of like spiritual places. I'll put like a little bit of frankincense on my mustache just to like ground me. Like I'll smell that, and it grounds me in sort of my spiritual practice.
What I love doing is I like taking like myrrh essential oil because it's very thick, and then like kind of cutting that with a lot of frankincense, so it's a lot easier to maintain. And it's like, it's really, really wonderful. It's like, no wonder they gave this to baby Jesus. It smells so good, But Shiva and Shakti. So Shiva is kind of that like masculine principle, right? And it's kind of like seen as this like the action, right? But the Shakti, the feminine part, is the wisdom and the power. You know what I mean? So it's like that power, which is then like, put forth into the world. So it's like it's seeing the feminine as something more unintelligible, I feel like makes more sense. And I feel like the modern man would probably hear that and maybe chuckle a bit, because it's like, yeah, I can't understand my female, you know what I mean? Like, it's like there's all these, like what is it that what is that song like or not no that book like men are from Mars and women are from Venus or something like that.
Yeah, that's by somebody with the last name Gray. I can't remember his first name, but yeah, men are from Mars, women are from Venus, something like that.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's you know we like we're completely different and like it's I find that like as a woman like I shouldn't try to do things that men are doing. I need to like use my femininity in a certain way and it's like the research field is so full of men and it's like sometimes a feminine view has a really great we notice things that other people can't like like my colleague like ancient lit dude like he was just showing me something and I was like it was about hieroglyphs and I was like I think you should use this kind of hieroglyph for this thing and he was like see like this is why I asked you because I never would have thought of that and then like I have similar moments where I ask like my male colleague something and they come up with something I'm like I never would have thought of that like and like on a mundane level I sometimes like I'll have my friend come into my room and I'm like, I don't know where to put this. And then they're like, I'll just put it right here. I'm like, I never would have thought of that, So it's like we need to help each other in this
Absolutely.
life. So it's like I shouldn't, that's why it's like I like with my personal training, like if I were to go into the gym and try to get a workout in that worked me out the exact same way that like, my trainer does for me, how long would it take me? And I could have spent that time doing something more interesting. And another thing is like society tends to advance when human beings are able to use things like use their time in better ways. So it's like if I can spend less time figuring out this part of my life and I could spend more time doing the thing that I'm good at, that's just like a better net win for humanity. So it's like I can spend time reading this very thick ass book on ancient Egyptian mythology and all this like research, this like all the stuff that I told you, like how long has it taken me to like learn all this? Like I don't really know, to like put it all together in the way that I've put it together. It's hard, but it's like my time is better spent doing that because now somebody can listen to this podcast, have quite a good view of knowledge on ancient Egypt, and they didn't have to spend like several hours doing so. They listened to this podcast, maybe even put it on double time speed and listen to it while they were driving. So,
Yeah.
in ancient Mesopotamia, like the cities started coming when like people were starting to specialize. So it's like instead of this guy who makes really sick pots, instead of having this guy be running around like trying to chase dinner, have the guy that likes chasing dinner, have the guy that likes doing that, do that, and have the guy that's good at making the pots do that. Because like, why are you gonna have him waste his time doing something that he's not good at? So that's kind of my little I don't know spiel on that. I don't know how we got into that, but
Yeah, well, we got into that because of Shakti and Shiva at first, but I love how our conversation has went into the polarity dynamics of the benefits of a feminine perspective and a masculine perspective. One thing that I thought of while you're speaking was it's the difference between a straight line and a curve. Curves are beautiful, but straight lines are beautiful too. Straight lines serve a purpose, just like the creativity of a curved line serves a purpose. And it's a really beautiful thing that is spoken about, elaborated on very well in a way that really resonates with me in the Kabbalion, which is Hermes Trismegistus. It's the philosophy of Hermes Trismegistus, the great, like the triple of the greats. So the greatest of the greats, Hermes in ancient Egypt is thought of as like the original scientist, the original astrologist, the original architect of things. And this book, the Kabbalion, is a beautiful look at the philosophy of Hermes, and they talk about polarity a lot, and that's really actually influenced a lot of it's given me a lot of information for how I look at the masculine and the feminine dynamics in everything. But it is literally in everything. The straight line, the curved line, the sky, the earth, the sun, the moon. It's like it's all it just beautifully represented in the way that we live in the world. I really love the conversation that we've been having about ancient Egypt and about spirituality. It is so resonant. It's so aligned with transpersonal psychology, with everything. Just you as a beautiful scholar, a researcher, and building your own curriculum for how you are learning, and clearly would be a great teacher of these things. How can people continue to connect with you, see what you're doing, follow you on Instagram, things like this? Where should people go to connect with you?
Well, okay, so I'm building a website, but I'd say for right now, go onto my Instagram. I post a lot on my story, and you guys can kind of see like a little bit of my daily life, just me going to the gym, me writing about a little bit about my lectures and everything. Then you could see some fun memes as well. But my Instagram is Krystal Von. So it's Krystal V as in Victor, ON and 108. And then you can pretty much keep up with me there. You know, I reply to most of my DMs as long as you're not creepy. But you know, yeah, like I would love to keep up, and I'm still in this kind of loading mode. I'm still kind of building up my stuff. Like my friend is going to help me get a real website up soon, because it's like there's just so many things that are always changing with me. You know what I mean? So it's like you know, humans are dynamic creatures, and I definitely feel like I'm a very dynamic creature. So, you know, you can kind of watch me change and watch me grow, and like not as a teacher, but as an eternal student. So, you know, come and learn with me, and, you know, just follow me on Instagram and keep up with me.
Absolutely. I love all of that. And you are clearly a very dynamic person. Thank you so much for this conversation. I really appreciate it. And yeah, cool.
Thank you.
Wow, I just got done rewatching the conversation with Krystal von Seyfried about Egyptology. Our conversation was awesome. I've been interested in Egyptology since I was a child, and we go through masculine and feminine dynamics in mythology and spirituality of ancient Egypt and the culture and so much more. She's such a dynamic person. Thank you so much. And she transliterates the name of the podcast, my name, Gray Transforms. Comment, like, share, subscribe, share this with a friend, share this with anybody you know that is interested in Egypt, and together we are moving humanity forward. There's more videos, we got it going on.